Sisters, working class heroes, this is The Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. It's official. It's over 306 to 232. All of the states have reported, been awarded. Joe Biden, number 46, has won 306 to 232, which is why on Twitter 306 was trending all day long. Now, it's interesting to me that the guy who has the 232 electoral votes hasn't figured out that there really isn't a path. There's not a path for him to win. Now, had it come down to Pennsylvania, like some people thought it was going to be, with Trump taking Georgia, taking Arizona, basically winning some of the states that he won in 2016, that Pennsylvania would be the new Florida. We'd have all of the fighting going on and the ballot recounting and all of that stuff. And there could have been an argument for the legislature to step in and do what they really wanted to do, which is force the electors to vote for Donald Trump. But there's just no path here. It's now too big. 306 to 233 to 232. It's not happening. It's just not happening. And it's one of these moments where Trump's got to come to the realization that guess what? You lost. It's over. It's done. Pack it in. Your administration's got to figure that out, which is why I found it interesting. Peter Navarro was on Fox Business. Peter Navarro is Trump's trade wizard. He's his trade advisor. Somebody who I don't think is totally terrible. Not thrilled with a lot of his politics, but on the trade stuff, he's somewhere in the ballpark of, he's got the right kind of idea. And again, on trade is somewhere that I think, pushed in the right direction. He identified the right problem, just had no solutions. Sorry, the only club that he had in his bag was tariffs, and that only goes so far. But Navarro was on Fox Business, and he said, "Look, we're working under the assumption that there's going to be a second term, that we're going to keep right on through." He said our assumption is a second term. Any speculation about what Joe Biden might do, I think, is a moot point. I think someone should tell Pete that it really is over, because there have been numerous lawsuits kicked out. In fact, now the Trump lawyers are going, you know what? That's okay. We're going to go home. Maybe Trump has decided that the legal fees are just way too much, and that it's just easier and cheaper to put it on Twitter and spread your conspiracy theory. And the thing is this is one of those moments where even people that I know that I somewhat have some respect for still, that you go, I may disagree with you politically, but at least, your arguments are honest and you're using something near fact. I've had the last couple of days some conspiracy stuff that's out there and has already been debunked numerous times, still being thrown at me. Like this Dominion story about how, they changed hundreds of thousands of votes. No, they didn't. And when Trump's own Department of Homeland Security comes out and says, no, this was the most secure election in the history of the republic. Not perfect, but the most secure in the history of the republic. This is one of those moments where you go, yeah, I think it's time to move along. Now, even Donald Trump himself, he made remarks today from the Rose Garden. Not the Rose Garden House of Supply in Spring Valley, New York. No, the one in Washington, D.C. They got this one right. They got the right location. He came out and he said that, who's to tell what's going to happen? Who knows? What he did say is emphatically his administration will not lock down. There will be no lockdown going forward, not as long as he's president. And he said, hopefully whatever happens in the future, who knows which administration it will be, I guess time will tell, is what has got everyone's attention. What that means is he still hasn't come to the reality that he lost. There's no other way of putting it. Sorry, Don, you lost. And in watching his Rose Garden spiel, where he's laying out the vaccine, you can see that the guy's just, he looks tired. He looks dejected. He didn't take any questions. He didn't get in any of his witty banter. There's part of me that goes, he's looking for the exit soon, probably, and that's going to be a good thing for the country. But continuing to push these conspiracy theories, continuing to push this division, not helpful for the country, especially in this moment. Especially in this moment where we're now entering the next phase of crisis, as the coronavirus is just out of control, and going to continue to grow. So we've averaged over the last 7 days more than 130,000 cases a day. Yesterday, over 150,000 cases. Next week, it's going to be worse. And still a guy at the wheel who's not getting it, and has very clearly told us, and probably the most honest moment of his administration, with the most candor, I'm not doing anything about it. We're not shutting anything down. He talked about the vaccines because he thinks the vaccine is the panacea, and they're gonna get it out. I guess the claim is by the end of the month to first responders and doctors and nurses and the folks on the front lines. And then by the end of April, maybe the other states, everyone's gonna get it. Is kind of the timeline. So we've got to make it through. We've got to make it through through April. And I sat and I thought about it. I watched the Rose Garden the speech, and I've been sitting there thinking about, anyone who knows me knows I'm not the half glass full guy. Optimism and rosy sunshine thinking is not me. I am completely and totally envious of Donald Trump, who can look at any situation and think he's the best ever, and his solution is the most wonderful ever. And I think my son threw it at me. He has the best good. It's the best good you can possibly have. I envy that. So I am not the optimist, but I'm looking at this moment, and I'm looking at it going, there's got to be some good that comes from this. There's got to, and I know this is just purely blind faith. This is hope and prayer. This is me attempting in an unusual moment to say that there could be a teachable moment here. There could be a moment that we expand, that we come together. And I look at this story from Kansas, where churches are voluntarily suspending in-person ceremonies, their worship services. They've now gone back to the online stuff. They're now taking personal responsibility, and this is something that I've been talking about for the very long time. When the Republican Party was the party of personal responsibility. Now, this is going back years. This is going back to the Gingrich era. This is going back, into the 90s and before. They have not been the personal responsibility party for a very long time, much like they haven't been the fiscally responsible party. Those things are long dead. They're gone, out the window. That's not the current Republican Party. But this might be that moment where, as a nation, we go, there's nothing coming from our government at this moment. There is no help. We are truly on our own. Everything Republicans have been telling us about government at this very moment is the absolute God's honest truth. They're ineffective, it's broken, and they don't care about us. This moment right here, today, is the moment where you can go, you know what? The Republican view of government is absolutely, positively, without question, reality. And they have made this so. They have made it so. They have hammered it on us. They have continued to force feed us this view that government's the problem, not the solution. And then they've sought out, through their incompetence, their failed leadership, and, well, their hatred of anything the commons, to prove that government can't work. Republican government cannot work. And we're in this moment where maybe we now have to start taking some personal responsibility. where we now have to police not just ourselves, but those around us. We now have to be that society that, well, is accountable. We can no longer say, well, the government should do that. We now have to, I think we're in this moment where we now have to be the ones to tell the Karens and the death cult to sit down and be quiet. To move away from society, to ostracize them, to be done with them. And we used to be this society, because I was just telling this story the other night, and I've told it here a couple of times over the years. I'm a labor guy. Labor is my focus. It's my passion. It's my way that we solve a lot of our societal problems. And an incident came up where a scab crossed a picket line, and I end up having to talk to policemen and this scab all together at the same time. And I told the story about when I moved in with my grandparents after my mother passed, and that my grandfather said, "You don't go across the street over there across the street and play with that guy's grandkids or anybody. You don't go anywhere near that house, or I will literally smack the what out of you." And I had no idea why. And it was about 10, 15, I guess 10, 12 years later, I asked him what that was about. And it turns out that guy had crossed a railroad picket like 50 years ago. Back in the 40s, this guy had crossed a railroad picket, and nobody in the community talked to him. Completely ostracized. And you go, "Oh, that's not right." And you go, "No, but that's how you built community. That's how you held people accountable." At some point, you can't have these discretions where people go, "Oh, well, I made a mistake. Oops, I'm sorry." I hear the right wing screaming about the cancel culture. Well, if you don't want to be canceled, don't do dumb stuff. Don't be a racist. Don't be a homophobe. Don't be a scab crossing a picket line. Don't be stupid. And maybe this is one of those moments where as a society we go, maybe it's time to have some of those societal pressures. And I know all the anti-bullying people say, "Oh, but Rick, you're bullying." No, this is how societies keep people themselves in check. This is how you have common values. And I know probably going to lose a bunch of Twitter followers over that, but that's okay. Goodbye. I'm in this spot where we need to hold people accountable because evidently we haven't held our government accountable. And maybe Joe Biden brings that back, or maybe we just have a complete pie fight for the next 4 years like we've had the last. Because I don't see Trump going away. I don't see the insanity going away. Because I think as we move through these next few months, I think we're going to see more and more people, hopefully. And again, I'm hoping people hear what I'm saying and go, yeah, maybe we do need to move back somewhere together. Maybe we need to get off the curbs and back into the middle of the street. But I think you're going to see the right, the death cult, the Trumpkins, however you want to frame them, the Republican Party. I think you're going to see them splinter a little bit more, where they're going to be the sane ones who are going to come back and go, okay, how do we reform our party to not be what we were? We're no longer the Trump party. How do we move forward into the 21st century? Put aside all of that stuff. And then the other side of the people who get left behind, who are going to be much more radical and much more extreme and much more conspiratorial. The tinfoil hats will turn into a solid aluminum. And then maybe there's a way to move forward. Because look, I've been saying, since Election Day, now is the time. The hard work is, how do we move forward? How do we move the country in a positive direction? How do we work together with those who we can and set those aside? Look, there are going to be some people who are unreachable. And like any organizing campaign ever, you set the fives aside. The people who are completely unreachable, stop wasting your time. If you're right now talking to someone who still believes Donald Trump won the election, make mental note, this is a person who can never be talked to or reasoned with, because they clearly don't get it. But if there are people who are going, you know what, hey, it is what it is. I voted for him. Let's move forward. Those are folks we can work with. And we won't agree all the time, but hopefully we can agree that the last 4 years of chaos, of being just blasted in the face with the fire hose of insanity can't continue. And I'm telling you, they're not going to continue under Joe Biden. But I don't think Trump goes away. Because I think, like I said, I think things get worse. Because we still have those remnants. I look at this QAnon kook woman who's now Congresswoman-elect, this Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has now come out and said, well, masks are oppressive. No, masks are something that you that you help protect yourself. She's running the hashtag, free your face, so that you can infect everybody else around you. And the number of people who are being infected, really alarming. And look, the reason I say that there's going to be this splitting, I don't know if you've known it, but Donald Trump came out and tweeted and said that, Fox News, their daytime ratings have completely collapsed. The weekend daytime, even worse. He said, very sad to watch this happen, but they forgot what made them successful, what got them there. They forgot the golden goose. I'm assuming he's the golden goose. I would have gone with, the marmalade goose maybe. He said the biggest difference between 2016 election and 2020 was Fox News. Again, blaming someone else for his loss. And then, pointing towards the OAN and Newsmax and some of these other really extreme, way out conspiracy theory. I'm not going to call them news sites. We'll call them propaganda sites, who basically make stuff up. If you look at what happened with this story, yesterday about this Dominion company, I guess they claim that there was a way to flip, hundreds of thousands of votes without actually having any sources, and actually quoted people who are really alive and have no idea what they're talking about. Just kind of out of thin air, pulling stuff out of where. And then you have someone like Ted Cruz whining about the mainstream media and putting Fox in that world. So I would like to welcome, this is again one of those moments where we can reach across the aisle. I would like to welcome Fox News to the radical liberal mainstream media. Because evidently they're now part of it. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, Larry Korb is going to be here to share some thoughts on the firings going on at the Pentagon and what we can do about that. Quick break. Right back. Stick around.
On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1974. That was the day Karen Silkwood was killed in a mysterious car crash. Though her death was ruled a one-car accident, some maintain she was forced off the road. Silkwood was a union activist and representative for Local 5-283 of the Oil, Chemical, and Atomic Workers. She worked at Kerr McGee's Cimarron plutonium plant in Crescent, Oklahoma, making plutonium pellets for nuclear reactor fuel rods. Meryl Streep popularized her life in the 1983 film Silkwood. Karen's union loyalty only grew after the company crushed a strike in 1972. She was elected to the Union Bargaining Committee just as the company moved to force a decertification election. She also served as a union health and safety rep. Silkwood found a number of apparent violations: routine contamination exposure, faulty respiratory equipment, falsified inspection reports, and improper storage of radioactive material. She met with OCAW leader Tony Mazzocchi to highlight safety issues in a campaign to beat back the decertification. It worked. Karen testified before the Atomic Energy Commission, worried about her own contamination. It was clear her home was contaminated too. She worked tirelessly to gather the documentation and the evidence detailing the company's life-threatening negligence. And on this day, Karen Silkwood was headed to Oklahoma City to meet Mazzocchi's assistant Steve Wodka and a New York Times reporter to present the evidence she collected. She never made it. Her car was found with rear-end damage near skid marks in a ditch along Route 74. While the company attempted to smear her as a drug-addicted lesbian who deliberately contaminated herself, they would eventually settle with her family for nearly $1.4 million. Karen Silkwood became a model and hero for women workers and all those who fight for safe workplaces.
don't even think they had any experience.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as we talked about yesterday for a little bit, you see Donald Trump, just getting the axe out and hatcheting people left and right. I guess we're up to like 11 people, and people in some pretty important roles. And as we talked about yesterday, you had Andy Card coming out and saying, look, you can't have this disruption in the transition, especially the transition of information, so people are up to speed on day one and can hit the ground running. And did allude to the potential of, opening the door to who knows what, possibly another terrorist attack, a 9/11 type thing, which he obviously blamed on Bill Clinton because of the slow transition. I certainly don't want to look back and go, this could have been part of that. And here to share some thoughts on, where we are and a little bit about the firings and why, I've asked Larry Korb to come talk with us. Larry is a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress, their website, americanprogress.org. Larry, thanks for taking time for us.
Nice to be with you, Rick.
So do you think it's too extreme for someone like Andy Card to come out and say, if we don't get this transition moving, could be another 9/11? Is that too extreme?
Well, I don't think so, because what happened in 9/11 was that Al Gore and Bush contested the Florida election, so they couldn't start the transition for 37 days after the election. So they didn't have that much time to get all the people. Because, if you decide you want to put Mary or Joe in, they've got to get a background check. The FBI, I remember when I became an assistant secretary, they asked me for my tax returns for 10 years.
Right.
So you have all of that. That takes a while. Then you got to go up for a Senate confirmation. So, yeah, we have 70 days. If you do it right, you probably can get 2 or 3 of the top people in the organization, but not everybody. And then if you pick someone and that person has a tax problem or something that they got to work out, that'll slow things down. So, yeah, I think Andy is not overreacting, particularly since we're at war. We're going Afghanistan. We have a war going on there. You have Iran with the starting to test ballistic missiles. You have the Chinese being aggressive, in the South China Sea. So yes, in national security, you really do need to get your team in there.
Yeah, but I look at these firings and Esper being the top of the list. Clearly Trump wanted to fire Esper a long time ago. A guy that he used to call Jesper, which I think is kind of weird. But he didn't get to do it during the campaign, so obviously he was the hatchet. But why all of the other people below him?
Well, what happened was, technically speaking, once Esper went, they all decided to go because for 2 reasons. One, they were comfortable; they were his, men and women. The other was they did not want to be part of what's going to happen now with this new team coming in, and they just really did not feel comfortable dealing with the issues under this team. For example, Jim Anderson left. Now, technically speaking, if he didn't, he might have been fired, but I think a lot of them said, well, I'm going to resign so I don't have to wait around and see if the new person coming in, trusts me and wants to keep me.
And Anderson was only an acting undersecretary, right?
That's right. And that, again, is another problem that you've had. A lot of the people that you've appointed could not get confirmed, and so they made them acting. And then, of course, you had a lot of people who wouldn't take the job, so late in the administration. Remember, Esper has only been there for about 16 months.
Yeah, so let me ask you this, because we've had 4 years of firings. Every time you turn around, there's lots of chaos and turnover, especially in positions like the defense secretary. How dangerous is that? There's got to be some continuity. There's got to be some consistency in those positions, because you can't have these wide swings, one way or another. At least I don't think you can.
Well, no, you can't, because right now, for example, the Congress is working on the 2021 defense budget. And the fiscal year was supposed to start in October. They weren't ready, so they're getting together. So you want to have the input from the Pentagon here. The outgoing administration prepares the next defense budget. And, of course, when Biden comes in, he can make some changes, but he doesn't have that long. It's supposed to go up to the Congress, in February. So, yes, you want to be working on that and have that ready to go. And you want to make sure that it is something that supports, the national security interest. And if you had the new team in there working with the old, they could make sure that it was done in a reasonable way. But now you got people who don't have the background themselves, plus we've delayed the transition because Trump refuses to concede.
No, it's definitely a scary time. But let me ask you about the firings. How much of what we're seeing of the firings then is Trump actually making these calls, axing people, and how much of it is, as you've said, Esper was canned, and a whole bunch of his loyalists have gone, and people that are ideologically in line with him have gone, and they've just abandoned the post. How much of it is one or the other?
Well, it's a combination of both. I think a lot of them, like Mr. Anderson, did it because they didn't want to get fired either by Trump or the new people coming in. So they could say, no, I resign. But I think it was pretty clear a secretary, he or she, needs their own people there. And they must have been anticipating this because they moved pretty quickly to get these other people in. For example, the person that's been appointed to going to be the assistant to Mr. Miller, who's the acting secretary, Doug McGregor, he's already over there, and he's somebody Trump tried to make the ambassador to Germany, and that didn't work. He couldn't get confirmed.
It's amazing how many of these folks couldn't get confirmed. Now, I know in the past there's always been some dickering around with whoever the president puts forward, but is it? Because this is one of those moments where I get Trump supporters going, well, nobody helped the president. They don't get through his people. They won't confirm him. How much of it is the gridlock, the obstruction, the delay that we hear people claim it is, and how much of it is these people just aren't qualified for these jobs?
Well, I think it's more the latter because don't forget the Republicans control the Senate, and so therefore to say that the Republicans are not supporting Trump. Like this retired one-star general Tata, who's now going to be, acting, he was turned down by the Congress and the Republican Senate because of the anti-Muslim tweets that he made, some of the sexual, assault allegations against him. So it wasn't that they decided, they're going to, show the executive or get somebody else. It was just that this person did not have the quality that you would want to be protecting our security.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary to me because I talked about this yesterday on the program a little bit. There was an article out that laid out, the handful of days that there were all these firings, people who were in charge of, the federal agencies that oversee nuclear weapons and electricity and natural gas regulations and oversee AIDS. And we saw, someone from the climate change research program going, and we saw somebody from the cybersecurity going. And it just seems like all of these, what I would argue are key positions and positions where you want a cop on the beat or at least an eye looking over the steering wheel, now being abandoned and us being in a really vulnerable place. And then having this transition friction or just outright, obstruction, not going to put us in a really good place come, December, January, February.
Well, that's correct, because in a normal time, Secretary Esper would be getting ready to meet with whoever, Biden was talking about or the transition team that's already been assigned. Now you're going to have Miller. He's got to learn himself before he can do that. And one of the people that they fired, too, was the head of the National Nuclear Security Agency. As far as I know, she had not done any, wasn't like Esper, criticizing the president. Why get somebody that's in charge of our nuclear weapons at this time?
Yeah, I mean, Lisa Haggerty, I think her name is, right?
Yes, yeah.
Again, I question the same thing. Why? And And it comes then to conspiracy. I had a guest yesterday who said, well, on Trump's old man bucket list is dropping a nuke. Maybe the target is going to be Iran. Maybe we open ourselves up to, some kind of cyber attack because evidently they've done very little to protect us, protect our grid and us on the cybersecurity front. And now the firing of this person who's in charge of keeping an eye on nuclear weapons. Maybe the idea is, maybe open up some vulnerability. And I hate to sound conspiratorial because it does sound crazy, but we're in weird times.
Well, we are, and it was just Trump getting back at all the people he hasn't been happy with, that he couldn't fire during the campaign because it would have created this chaos we're talking about and further undermine his chances. But now that the election's over, he can get them. I do not know if Ms. Haggerty, gave him advice or testified, but as far as I know, she's been honest with the Congress about, the nuclear buildup and where we are with nuclear weapons. And, Trump has been very cavalier about talking about nuclear weapons, sort of like they were just, another rifle or something.
Yeah, we're going to nuke a hurricane.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he was joking, maybe.
Well, I hope he was, but again, he's been very, very cavalier about these things. For example, one of the big things, I think Biden may be able to correct it, our agreement with Russia on limiting the number of strategic nuclear weapons expires February 5th. Putin has offered to extend it for 5 years. Trump hasn't taken him up on that. And I'm sure that, Ms. Haggerty was saying, no, you need to do this because we can work out a lot of things over the next 5 years. But if that expires, you have nothing. You have nothing. And something else is going to happen that nobody's paying attention to. On November 22nd, not far from now, the Open Skies Treaty that they got out of last May, we're out of it come November. So we will not be able to fly over Russia and see what's going on anymore. And if you want to get it back again, you may have to go back to the Senate to get it confirmed.
Which that is never going to happen.
No, I mean, not with the composition of the Senate, which is a whole other question here, in terms of some of the people that are there. And so, again, this is something, that, again, I'm sure these people have been complaining to Trump about it. But he's anything Obama did, I'm getting out of.
Yeah, no, that was we knew that day one was going to be the reality. But here's the question then, because I have lots of Trump supporting listeners and friends who come and say, there's nobody who's been better on national security than Donald Trump. He is he's strong and he's the leadership has made the world a safer place and all the jingoism I'm sure you've heard. But yet I hear you laying out all of these things that we're either ending or deciding to end. And I'm going, this doesn't sound like we're anywhere close to safe and secure.
No, we're not. And, if we get rid of Biden will have a week or so to do it. But do you realize that we would have no agreement since Richard Nixon, not some pacifist, was in there, made the first arms agreement in 1972. Every president since then, George H.W. and George W. both made, agreements to keep limiting the number of nuclear weapons. And so you don't want to have any agreement on it and start a new arms race? We've already got, us and Russia, 90-some-odd% of the world's nuclear weapons. You want us to have more?
Well, there are those, Larry, who believe that that's how we show our strength. When the reality is that's not the war. That's not the battlefield of the 21st century. I mean, cybersecurity is the battlefront, and we're, from what I'm reading, and you're the expert here, we're falling miserably behind on.
We are, and again, Trump put a lot of money into defense, basically. But he claimed when he came in, our defense was terrible. No. I mean, General David Petraeus in 2016, you remember he was the commander in Iraq and Afghanistan. Yep. He said, our military is awesome. Trump comes in and said, oh, it's horrible, I got to fix it. And, yeah, he threw a lot of money at it, but it wasn't horrible. And so this whole idea that he inherited this mess from Obama, who was a pacifist, Obama in his first term, if you control for inflation, spent more on defense than Trump did in his what will be his only term.
Yeah. No, but this is, you can't tell a Trump supporter this. Obama was weak. Obama didn't do anything. But here's the thing: the folks on the left then go, Obama was just as bad as George W. Bush because he used drones, and so we're in this weird world where nobody's right because, well, everyone's wrong.
I know. I mean, you have these perceptions now. Trump politically was able to convince people of that. Unfortunately, that's how he got elected. And, Secretary Clinton was one of the hardliners in the Obama administration. So the idea that, she was weak on defense and all, she supported the invasion of Iraq. And somehow or another, Trump was able to convince people, of that. And the Democrats, I think, this time were smart because they didn't nominate anyone. I love Bernie Sanders, but he would have been perceived the way a lot of these people that support Trump are perceived. Yeah. The Democrats.
No, I was a big supporter of Bernie Sanders, still am. 2016, I think he would have won if he were the nominee.
Yeah,
I think he would have gotten crushed this time around.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Yeah, I think he would have won in 2016 because the country was looking for something different at that particular time. And I had the craziest experience. Where I work, we go over and brief congressmen all the time. So I briefed Bernie back in 2015, and in one of the debates, Hillary said, "You have no experience in foreign policy." So, well, neither did Obama. She said, "But he had a good team. Who do you have?" Who do you think he mentioned? Me. Everything, my phone just was ringing off the hook and everything.
No,
it was normal. I also briefed, Rand Paul.
No, I see you as one of those guys who you tell it like it is. There's no ideology here. There's just fact, and we need more of that.
Yeah, we do. And, hopefully when Biden gets in, a lot of people I've looked on as, the people he has in his transition, they all have government experience. And, I think that hopefully they can get the pandemic under control, and then we can get back to kind of normal things.
Yeah, some bit of normal, and hopefully we stop the insanity and bring some stability back. But Larry, I appreciate the time. It's always great talking with you.
Call me anytime.
I hope you come back again soon. Thanks so much.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Good stuff. Larry Korb, Senior Fellow there at the Center for American Progress. You can check out their website, AmericanProgress.org. Quick break, right back. Stick around and listen to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
I don't even think they had any experience.
The Holland Tunnel connecting New York City and New Jersey opened for traffic. Before the tunnel, the only way to cross the Hudson River from the city to New Jersey was by ferry. City officials decided to build a tunnel to alleviate congestion. But they had a problem. All those cars driving underground would cause a potentially deadly buildup of carbon monoxide. There had to be a way to ventilate the tunnel. Engineer Clifford Holland came up with the solution. Big fans located at each end of the tunnel could draw fresh air into the passage. The giant fans were nearly as tall as a 10-story building. In honor of his engineering work, the tunnel was named after Holland. But he did not live to see the completion of his vision. The tunnel also owes its existence to unionized labor. The workers who performed the back-breaking work of digging New York's vehicle and subway tunnels called themselves the Sandhogs. In a 1983 book about the union, written by Paul Delaney, a worker recounted his memories of the Holland Project, saying, quote, "The turnover in workers was unbelievable. Men would work an hour or maybe a shift, and they'd never be seen on the job again. Even the strongest men were tired after 15 or 20 minutes in the air. And there was always the worry about being fired. If a man went for more than 2 sips of water during a shift, he was told to collect his wages and go home." 14 workers died on the project. More than 1 billion cars have made the trip under the Hudson River since it first opened. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the next several days are going to be interesting as Biden's transition team, comes out with who they're going to be putting into positions. There are a number of secretary positions that I'm interested in seeing. Secretary of Labor being one of them. And as I've said, I'm a big Bernie Sanders fan. I don't think he's going to get it. I think he is the perfect choice. But it seems that Labor is coalescing around Michigan Congressman Andy Levin, who I'm not against. I mean, there are a couple of names circulating. I'm obviously going to be pushing for Sanders, but Levin's name's out there. The UAW has come out in support of him, as has CWA. Now we'll see. We'll see how this plays out. I would love to see someone who is, someone who believes in labor, someone who believes in the idea of collective bargaining, the idea that workers have the right to join and form unions to fight for better wages, hours, and conditions. I would love to see that. Someone who believes in that than someone who was a Walmart lawyer who's trying to figure out how to use the department against workers, which is what we have now in the son of Scalia. I can't wait for that moment. And one of the things that's interesting to me in this moment, as I've been saying, and I've taken some nonsense over it, I'm of the mindset this moment in history is an interesting one because out of chaos comes opportunities. Out of pain and suffering comes some chances to do things better. And we're in that moment. We're in this moment of chaos where a lot of people are agreeing on some stuff that, maybe we didn't before. So if you were in the Make America Great Again category, if you were one of the MAGA hat wearers, you bought the shirt, you got the flag, all that, or if you're in the Biden camp of, Build Back Better, you're in one of the, if you've picked your slogan and you got the bumper sticker on your car, there's an opportunity to do both of them. Maybe where we put down our flags and we put our hats back in the drawer and fold up the shirt and put it away for Halloween. And I've been saying that it's around work issues. It's around, taking to picket lines. It's around fighting for better wages, hours, conditions. And that moment came to me today. I was on a picket line, 7:30 this morning. And the union had brought out one of those little porta-johns so that the picketers would have somewhere to go, since it's literally out in the middle of nowhere. The nearest bathroom's like 5 miles away. And the guy who came to clean the porta-john, nice guy. I wouldn't want his job. Thank goodness he does it. Deserves everything he gets and then some. Asked the simple question, so what are you guys out here for? And I took this as an opportunity to educate. I said, look, they're out here because the company wants to, short them on healthcare. It's all about healthcare. It's all about increasing the cost on the employee for healthcare, even though the company is self-insured. They're probably actually making a profit off of cheating their workers out of healthcare. And it's over, co-pays and deductibles and co-insurance and all of the things that we've now come around to, know as the American healthcare system. And the guy goes, man, I wish I had a union. I wish I could fight back against some of that stuff because my company, they've been doing to us this for years. Every year our insurance goes up and our wages don't. Every year I fall backwards and he's like, I'm powerless. And I said, this is one of those moments where I'm a big fan of finally coming to some sanity and saying, this is where we end employer-based healthcare. This is where we end giving employers the power to hold our health insurance. And the guy's like, yeah, you're right. For too long, we've been stuck. He goes, and then he told me his story The reason that he's stuck at the job that he's at is he can't find anywhere that has better insurance, and that his wife had some procedures. She has some ailments, and I'm not going to go into what those are, but they've reached their deductible, and now she needs an ultrasound, and the insurance company won't pay for it. And they're like, well, we don't have to. And the doctor's like, this is vital. This is necessary. And he brought it up. He said, what happened to, I don't want anyone between the patient and the doctor. We hear a lot of people saying this. We've got an insurance company saddled right between us because I can't afford the thousands of dollars that it's going to cost to get this ultrasound. And he's like, we got to do something on healthcare. And he goes, I wish you guys the best. So this is one of those moments. This is one of those opportunity moments. Now, a couple weeks ago, we started here at the program with a new platform. We're on multiple platforms. We do all the podcasting sites, the Spotify's, the Podbeans, the iTunes, wherever you can be. That's where we are. We were approached, several months ago by this platform, ThinkSpot, that is a center right to further right platform. And the reason that we opened up dialogue with these folks is that I truly believe that's where the conversation and the fight has to be. We do our program live in one of the reddest areas in the country, because this is where the argument is. This is where the fight is. This is where the hearts and minds can be changed, because everyone's dealing with healthcare problems. Everyone's dealing with the fact that it's getting harder and harder to make ends meet, that they're working more hours, they're taking on second jobs, and things are still not getting better. And I'm going to say for Joe Biden what I said for Donald Trump, what I said for Barack Obama, what I said for George W. Bush. I hope this president is the guy who returns reward to work. This is the guy who comes in and pursues policies that's going to make it easier for families to exist, to pay their bills, to keep a roof over their heads, for families to stay together, and for maybe possibly, and I know this is way out there, this is so old school, I'm showing my age, that maybe a family can get by on, I know, here it comes, one income. That one income can support a family. I know. Maybe we're thinking utopian here, but we've tried it before and it worked for a little bit of time. And this is where having the right Secretary of Labor, I think, can help. But the thing that gets me is that we've stopped talking to each other. We're in our little silos, and we never cross paths. Understand, the people who are on the picket line that I spend time at, more than half of them voted for Trump. Not because they're racists or homophobes or maybe they secretly are, but because they heard the message that he was going to make their lives better. Now, sadly, that hasn't worked out, but I'm hoping that someone listens. And the reason we went to ThinkSpot, and I hope people will follow us to ThinkSpot, we do our program live there during the week. And also on Sundays at 8 p.m., we do a live question and answering period, which has been really good. Problem is, I'm still learning the platform. A few little glitches, so we haven't really pushed it. But out of this center right to farther right platform, I have gotten some of the best questions that you could get on labor issues. Thoughtful, inquisitive, and admitting that they don't know. And, like the one of them, can you talk a bit about right to work and why you think it's bad for America? Clearly they don't know. Do you think there's a conflict of interest when unions contribute to political parties that they collectively bargain with behind closed doors, and they point to teachers' unions? Those are honest questions and ones that we should be able to answer. Why I think right to work as constructed in the Taft-Hartley legislation is bad for the country is it puts government right in the middle of a relationship between the employer and the employee. It tells you cannot have a closed shop. It tells you cannot mandate that everyone's in the union. So you're immediately causing division within the ranks of your union, which is, well, an employer's dream. But what it's also done is it's divided the country. where we've created poverty states against states where that we're doing fairly well. You see a lot of the move south. We've been seeing this for decades. And it's partly because of Taft-Hartley holding wages down in those areas. Now people say, wow, Rick, in those southern states, wages are rising. When you start off down here and you have a little bit of a boost up, still nowhere near where you are in many of the other states, in the states where you value the ability to collectively bargain and get better wages, hours, conditions. It looks like a huge jump, but your standard of living isn't any better. I'm always a believer of democracy in the workplace, and what the Trump administration has done through their Supreme Court pick and the Janus decision, and states, ramming through the no rights at work agenda, is they've taken people's ability to simply make an agreement with their employer. The pendulum has again swung to the side of power and money. And that one little tool, 1935, when they passed the Wagner Act, giving workers some rights on the job, some ability to determine their conditions, their future, the wealth of their work, has been taken. You say, well, Rick, they still have the right to organize. They do. But when you take all the resources out of it by saying that you can enjoy the benefits that the union brings you without actually paying for them, what are you doing? You're creating a divisive environment. Because all right to work really is saying that, you can have a union shop in a workplace, but you can have a bunch of freeloaders who take the things that you bargained for freely, and that you then have to represent when they get into whatever, into trouble or for health care or whatever. You have to represent them for free. So it's not so much as right to work as it is right to freeload. But they love to frame it in, you have personal freedom. Well, I would like to have the freedom to say we don't want people in our workplace. We want to democratize the workplace to where all of us in the workplace, if a majority of us believe there should be a union shop, that everyone is in it. Everyone is pulling their weight. Now, there's an argument for that. And interestingly enough, conservatives have sometimes made this argument that you want moderating forces in your union so they don't get extreme, so that they don't ask for $10 an hour and go on strike and shut your company down just over extreme proposals. And you can see this in the strike that I'm working on now. Their demands are, well, much less than I'd be asking for. To say reasonable would be an understatement. To blow your mind, the company basically forced these workers out onto the picket line for $80,000 a year. Now, this is a multi-billion-dollar global corporation who decided that $80,000 a year in healthcare premiums and 401k maintenance fees was worth shutting down their operation, was worth bringing in people from another state to live in a hotel to try and do the work that these folks did incredibly well, having angry customers who have delays in their packages and in their products, and have working overtime in other facilities to make up the difference, that was worth showing their power. That they're going to spend well more than $80,000 in the next couple of weeks and months to try and put this strike down, where they could have just come to the table reasonably and said, you know what, we can solve this. Or better yet, they could have come and said, you know what, we can even meet somewhere. But no, they dug in. Why? Because again, that pendulum is way to the side of corporations and money and power on that side. And I'm hoping that a labor secretary like a Sanders or even Levin will help in moving that back in the other direction, with a National Labor Relations Board that will help in not making horrible decisions. Another question I got over on the ThinkSpot platform that I thought was really great. They asked about with the conflicting needs two of the gig economy and changing labor relations in the modern workplace. What role do you see for unions playing moving forward? It's an excellent question, because the reality is, because of this pandemic, work is going to change in huge ways, and we're not going backward. Technology is taking over. Automation is coming. We've got to figure out, and quickly, how to address those concerns. There are so many people who are working for themselves, in these somewhat attached to corporations ways, the gig economy. And I've said, labor already has kind of the answer to that. If you look at the building trades, they're basically they've been the gig economy for decades. They don't work for one employer, they work for multiple contractors, but they work under one contract. Doesn't matter if it's ABC contracting or BCD contracting or EFG contracting. They all pay the same wage, the same benefit, the same working conditions, all of them. They're all signatories to a contract, and they work under an umbrella. So it doesn't matter who the paycheck's coming from. You've got the same health care because it's cared for by the union. You get the same pension because it's under the same umbrella of a union management negotiating team. To me, that's the future of this. The idea of secretarial bargaining, the idea that you bargain across industries, even for low-wage workers. And you go back to the 90s with the Justice for Janitors campaign, where you had multiple independent contractors and these small companies who did office building cleaning, where they got contracts for all the big high-rises that no matter who they use, this was the wage that they were going to pay. These were the benefits they were going to pay. And they did an incredible job of organizing that. I see that as the future. No matter who you work for, you're going to get paid a reasonable wage. This isn't the race to the bottom. This isn't, I'm willing to slit your throat for a penny. This is, you're paid for what you're worth. Your benefits are portable. Your health care is portable. Your retirement is portable. It isn't controlled by a corporation, to where when, hey, we disagree, the first thing to do is cut it off. That you actually have some bit of empowerment. And I think that's the way we need to be thinking into the future. I'm still pushing to remain for the remnants of the 20th century employment situation. But the gig economy for some workers is going to be the reality. And especially for younger workers who have been exploited and screwed over by this economy. And we have to come to the realization that the Ubers and the Lyfts and all of them, they're probably here to stay. So what you have to do is you have to set a floor and say, okay, this is the new world. But we're not going to put it into a situation where you're going to make billions of dollars off the back of labor and not kick some of it to everyone else, and not make it to where you're absolutely decimating the employment situation of others. It just seems like common sense to me. I'd love to hear your thoughts, though. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1909. And on this tragic day, 259 coal miners died in a mine in Cherry, Illinois. The Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Railroad opened the mine in 1905 to supply coal for their trains. Most of the miners were immigrants, primarily Italian. Many could not speak English. An electrical outage earlier that week forced the miners to light kerosene lanterns and torches. A coal car filled with hay caught on fire from one of the wall lanterns. The blaze spread to timbers supporting the mine. One of the survivors remembered, "We stopped working as usual shortly before 3:30 o'clock and set out for the shaft. After we had proceeded about a half a mile toward the shaft, we detected a faint odor of smoke, which became more marked as we advanced, until it was almost unendurable. Then we knew the mine was on fire and that there was danger ahead. Many of the miners did make their way to the surface, and some then returned to the mine to aid others. Heroic volunteers attempted to rescue the trapped miners. 12 rescuers died. The mine shafts were closed off to smother the fire, but this caused many miners to suffocate from the mixture of carbon dioxide and nitrogen which built up. One small group of miners were able to survive 8 days until their rescue by building a wall to seal out the fire and poisonous gases. They drank water leaking from a coal seam. As a result of this disaster, the Illinois legislature established stronger mine safety regulations. They passed a law that later developed into the Illinois Workmen's Compensation Act.
Cherry, cherry, so soft on your life. Not everyone knows the story inside. At the turn of the century, 1909.
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Many years ago, literary critic Dorothy Parker skewered an unfortunate author with her sharp wit. "This is not a novel to be tossed aside lightly," she said. "It should be thrown with great force." That's how a lot of us feel about this presidential election year, distinguished by an incumbent who is so self-centered, incompetent, and both mentally and morally unsteady that he's more dangerous than a baby who's gotten hold of a hammer. He's been demolishing truth, shattering law, smashing rights, trashing the common good, and, well, generally eradicating the egalitarian principles that unify Americans into a functioning democracy. The worst, most divisive election ever, right? No, that honor belongs to the 1860 contest that Lincoln won, despite rabid racism, furious intimidation of voters, vicious personal attacks, and daily death threats, not only from the goofball Proud Boys of the day, but from public officials and establishment newspapers. If Lincoln is elected, a Virginia member of Congress told the New York Herald, "We will go to Washington and assassinate him before his inauguration." 10 southern states wouldn't even put his name on the ballot. Yet Lincoln stayed both calm and firm in a time of dangerous turmoil, and not only did he hold a bitterly divided nation together, but he expanded our democratic ideals and advanced the power of ordinary people to achieve them. He didn't just shout, "Make America great again." He did it. Indeed, he died for it. This is Jim Hightower saying, the point is that Lincoln did not preserve the noble idea of America by rewriting law, but by altering the culture, pushing the people themselves to act on their better natures. So, 160 years after that toxic election, here's another one, and there's no Lincoln in sight. That means we the people have to do the healing ourselves, based on our shared values of fairness, justice, and opportunity for all.
Hightower's commentaries are brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown, the monthly newsletter with Hightower's take on what Wall Street and Washington are up to. For information, visit hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I'm still stuck on this Q-Kook. Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Congresswoman-elect from Georgia, who, again, as I said earlier, she's now on the masks are oppressive, free your face, my body, my choice nonsense. She says, in Georgia, we work out, shop, go to restaurants, go to work, and school without masks. Yeah, this is the reason that we're seeing 150,000 new cases yesterday, 137,000 new cases each and every day for the last 7 days, and it is going to get worse. The kookery is strong with some of these folks, and here to share some thoughts on, well, are masks oppressive? I've asked our good friend Dr. Keith Pojek to come share some thoughts with us. Keith, thanks for taking time.
Rick, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So it's oppression. It's oppression. We're being oppressed. Right. The tyranny of the masked folks.
This like piece of cloth across my face, right? It's definitely tyranny. It's unbelievable, right? And I call them instead of QAnon, I call them ADI QAnon. The entire group, and so ADI QAnon went to Washington today, and she's not the only one. There's a guy in North Carolina who beat out a very qualified candidate, Colonel Morris Davis. That's a fellow named Madison Cawthorn, who's like very young, unqualified, has never actually held a real job, and he's another Q idiot who is headed to the House of Representatives. It really just speaks to our country's lack of understanding of civics and history, I think, and that's one of the things that this is going to take generations to correct. This is going to take, and that's one. I hope that Joe Biden on day one announces that as part of his strategy. Is that we're going to institute a 100-year commitment to civics and history education in American public schools, because if that were a staple right now, these people would not be in Congress.
No, that's
they really
true.
wouldn't.
No, it's true. But here's the thing: I blame all of this on the fact that they've walked away. That the Democratic Party, liberals have walked away from competing in the areas that Republicans have dominated, and talk radio being a huge part of it, cable news being another huge part of it. I was watching a clip of Lou Dobbs going on and on about how we're not going to take the results of the election, and in a sane, rational world, everyone, not just the majority, everyone would look at Lou Dobbs and say, sit down, shut up, you're wrong, the people have spoken, we know this is the most secure election in our country's history, not perfect, but the most secure to this point. How can you possibly now say that there's all of this stuff that we're now finding out you made up and it's all fraudulent? I keep coming back to, you have to shout these people down as loudly as they're out there making stuff up.
They have. I mean, Republicans have walked away from not just, a commitment to democracy itself, not just a commitment to human rights. They've walked away from a commitment to truth, and that's where their party is. And I think that, to be honest, I hope that they don't unhitch their wagon from the Trump turd. Like I hope it stays hitched to that turd as long as it possibly can.
Yeah.
But because that's the only way that we're ever going to get to the point where we rebuild a and we do need a conservative party in America. Honestly,
absolutely,
I think we do.
True.
I mean, I think that there has to be, that discourse, that political discussion that goes on back and forth. But right now, at this point, the parties, they're literally, there's no common ground. There's not any.
And there's no ideology. I mean, the reality is, I used to, during the Bush days, you could argue compassionate conservatism, and, people had their belief structure. There doesn't seem to be an ideology associated with Trumpism, other than if Trump says it, it's got to be true. And I said from the beginning, had Donald Trump came out, and maybe you'll agree or disagree, had he come out in January and into February and said, look, we've got this information. The virus is real. It came from China. He can blame China all he wants, but it's real. It's dangerous. We believe, we're not 100% certain, but we believe that it's spread through the air, and we believe the best course of action is to wear a mask, socially distance, wash your hands. And my patriot followers, it is your responsibility as patriots to our country to make sure that you wear a mask and others around you do it. And I think if you would have given those crazy people the empowerment to demand everyone around them wear masks, we'd be in a completely different country. Donald Trump would have won in a huge landslide instead of losing.
Right. He would have won the election. You're exactly right.
Instead of losing in a landslide.
Yep.
This would be a different country. But he didn't. This, to me, is the glaring red lights of failure of leadership. And I'm hoping under Biden we're going to have much better, much saner, much more rational leadership.
I think we will. I mean, I think that the biggest point that I would make is that, there are upshots to having a long career in politics. I mean, we lambast these people who are career politicians, but someone like Joe Biden, who is pretty universally respected among Republicans and Democrats, this is someone who's going to, I really think, and this is going to sound like a stretch, he's going to assemble a cabinet that I think the talent level is going to rival the cabinet that Abraham Lincoln had. Like that's how many people are attracted to this guy, just because he's a decent, honest, good man who's actually going to listen to them. And that's the power of a strong leader. It's not necessarily the fact that he always has to be the smartest guy in the room in every room that he enters.
Yep.
It's that he knows when to defer
No,
to someone who's an expert. And I think that like the level of talent that he's going to put together for this cabinet is going to be almost unmatched in American history.
that's an excellent point, because my youngest daughter came to me today, and I guess one of her assignments in school was to think about the qualities of a president. You know, what do you think the best qualities of a leader, of a president would be? And she went through and she had really thought it out, and she had listening and decision making and problem solving, and she had all of these things. And I threw in there ego. I mean, you've got to have security in yourself to be able to say, okay, you know more than I do, explain it to me, and then to actually listen. And I think all of those things are important. I think Biden has them.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, and I think that to make the choice that he did for vice president, and a lot of people will say, well, of course that was the politically expedient choice. I mean, I think he also chose the right person. I mean, I think that Kamala is brilliant. She's experienced. She's well spoken. She's charismatic. And so maybe that was a politically expedient choice. But I think also that the 40 some odd years that he's had in politics, and you see people like Lindsey Graham fawning over him about what a great person he is. I mean, this is a guy who's going to attract a level of talent to surround himself with that I'm not really sure that we will have ever seen.
Yeah, I hope that's. Look, I'm with you. I think that's going to happen. But to be clear, I've said this all along, and I have to stick with it. Joe wasn't my first choice, but you know what? On January 20th, 2021, Joe is my president, and Joe is the guy that I am going to work hard to make sure that we get the things that we need, and I'm going to work hard to make sure that he's accountable for the things that he does. As any president, I would be any president. But I'll tell you, and no more in my life have I ever been more hopeful for someone than I am for Joe Biden.
Yeah, I mean, and in your state, hey, came through big time in the clutch for us. North Carolina couldn't quite get over that.
Yeah, well, you didn't have Joe Jorgensen, though.
We tried, but we couldn't quite get there.
You didn't have Joe Jorgensen, so that's
true.
We had Joe Jorgensen here, who, Biden won by 58,000 votes. She got 78,000.
That's true.
So you could thank Joe Jorgensen for Pennsylvania going to Biden.
But then, what do we do, Rick, about, there's still obviously, we're so divided right now in America, and there are 70,000+ people who are so upset, and some of them may accept election results, some of them may not, but, and they still believe the wrong person won the election, and, how do we win those people back? I mean, I've lambasted them over and over and over, social media and wherever else.
As I've been saying for the longest time,
being idiots. What do we do?
I've been saying for the longest time, we have to agree where we can, disagree where we have to, and for those folks who aren't willing to come along, you have to let them go. It's like any organizing campaign. The people who are going to still wear the Trump hats and wear the Q shirts, you got to let them go. You got to ostracize them off to the side and move forward where you can. And I argue that Joe Biden should come out immediately with an infrastructure plan. Should immediately, obviously, the coronavirus plan, because we got to get this under wraps. But you got to do things that are going to make people's lives better immediately. And jobs first and foremost. To steal Carville's line, it's the economy, stupid. So outside of it's the pandemic, stupid. It's still the economy.
I agree, and then also you listen and read to Sarah Kinzior and Andrea Chalupa, right, on Gaslit Nation, and they'll admonish us correctly so, to say, hey, we've also got to prosecute these crimes. We have to root out the corruption that occurred, because otherwise it's emboldened. Otherwise it's enabled.
Yeah.
And how do you do that without turning off almost half the country when you go after that? I mean, this is going to be a high wire act.
No, it is. But here's the thing, and I'll make the prediction now. You can write it on the calendar. It's been my view for a while. As much as I want to see the criminals prosecuted, it's not going to happen. You're not going to see mass perp walks. There may be some state things that pop up against Trump, but I don't see the federal government going after him. I don't see there being, mass indictments. One, there's too many problems we got to deal with: the virus, the economy, making sure that people get health insurance, and kids get fed, and the homeless people find shelter. And oh, by the way, the global pandemic known as coronavirus. These all come first. I just don't see Joe Biden being someone who's going to make a turn and cause the kind of divisive moments that prosecutions would bring us.
Yeah, and I think that's probably politically that's the way to handle things. But I think that there's also so much rightful angst.
Yeah.
That's built up against some of these folks, and then a lot of us want to see Stephen Miller marched into The Hague.
Absolutely, I'm right there with you, Keith.
Right, and so how exactly do we handle that without further just driving a wedge between the two divided I guess cohorts of the country.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, and look, I'm there with you, but I'm of the mindset I know it's not going to happen, so I have to not get my hopes up, and I have to not promote the idea that it's even possible, because history has shown us that it's not. When Obama became president, I had hoped there were going to be perp walks of all the criminals on Wall Street that collapsed our economy, that all of the people who showed Congress faulty information that got us into wars. I was hoping they'd be dragged onto the carpet. It didn't happen. A precedent has shown us it's not going to happen. So what I have to focus on is, how do we win people back by making lives better, by doing the hard work that needs to be done. Mm-hmm. I don't have time to get mired in what ifs. I got work to do.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the reasonable side of that stance is that, like, how are we going to positively impact the greatest number of American lives? So, I mean, you could say, we're going to target a few dozen people, or we're going to further workers' rights, across the country, or women's rights across the country. And so I totally understand, but still, I mean, there's a lot of us, and it's not just a vengeance kind of mindset. It's we have to quash this precedent of
I'm with you.
Crime
Keith,
as well.
We don't disagree.
Yeah.
I want to see perp walks as far as the day is long. I want to see them all in shiny bracelets and in orange jumpsuits, spending time at the Gray Bar Hotel like anybody else.
Right.
My problem is that I just don't see it happening.
Right.
And I don't expect it to happen. So what can we actually accomplish? Because we've had, on the infrastructure front, we've been talking about infrastructure as long as I've been doing this show now, 15 years. We've been talking about mass investments in roads and bridges and waterways and airports, and in broadband access to bring rural communities like the one I live into the 21st century. We have done none of that stuff on the level that we need to. And for me, getting tied down in, I really want vengeance against Donald Trump. And as a country, I do. But I also want to make sure that kids don't go hungry, that kids who right now are stuck at home on computers that are frozen because the internet sucks, aren't getting the education that they need. We got so much to do and so little time to do it.
No, that's fair. I mean, I think that's a completely reasonable and well thought out stance that how do we positively impact the most number of lives in America? So for sure. I mean, I have no basis to arm wrestle.
Now, here's the other part of this, Keith. I do know if the shoe were on the other foot. If we were talking about, a Donald Trump administration being able to go after the Obama administration like they tried, and if there were actual crimes there to be prosecuted, there would have been long lines of perp walks. They
Absolutely.
wanted to in the worst way. So I have no visions of grandeur that my conservative friends or the folks on the far right or the Q Cokes or the MAGA hat wearers, that they wouldn't do exactly what we're talking about and tie the country up in complete gridlock just to get their political retribution. I want to say we're better than that, and we've got to move forward, because I still do care about those kids going hungry and without an education and people not being able to put a roof over their head.
Like I said, I can't have a tough time arguing against that one. But the only pushback I have is not, even if you peel away the vengeance aspect of it, it's okay, we've got to destroy this precedent that, government positions automatically entitle you to criminal behavior, for which you'll be forgiven at some point. So that's it's tough. I mean, how do you walk that walk, unite the country, and still, empower and lift up the people who need it the most, without, driving a wedge further between, the two camps that we have right now in America, who have, like we hinted at, very, very few grains of sand of common ground.
I'm with you. Don sent me an email, though, saying that just because it's expedient doesn't mean we shouldn't be doing it, because it's right to hold people accountable. We need accountability over expedience. And look, I'm again not disagreeing. I do believe that we should have accountability and hold people accountable. I just fear we get mired down. And this is one of those moments where, maybe it's my wanting to get things done that I'm willing to move past it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I just got so much in this moment. I guess where I take some solace is maybe Twitter will ban Trump forever, and we won't ever have to see another tweet. That would be punishment enough. Put him in Twitter prison.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that would be that would definitely be purgatory for him if he couldn't access social media. I guess he's always got Facebook or Parler or whatever that we never log on to.
Yeah, I don't.
Whatever.
I have a Parler account just because I like to see.
Do you really? Like, you do that to just kind of spy a little bit?
No, I want to see. I have all of them. I set up something on all of them because doing what I do here, you've got to be in different places, get your thumb on the pulse of different stuff. And I know you're not supposed to use your thumb to take the pulse, but that's a whole other thing. But in this case, I did put my thumb on the pulse of Parler, and I stepped away from it because it is a step down in sanity. I mean, the sad reality is the folks there are living an alternative worldview.
I did. I mean, and I did set up an alt Twitter account just to follow a lot of the like crazy right wingers and feel like I could kind of weigh in and see what's going on and see what the scuttlebutt is there, or whether it's crazy or not. And of course it's crazy, but to be honest with you, it's actually been pretty fun, to see, especially like the meltdown phases that some of these folks go through. So I would actually highly encourage like setting up an alt Twitter account and just following some of the crazy right wingers.
No, I don't have a problem following them with my own account. I'm willing to follow people. I want to see what they're saying, and there are people I check in on occasionally to see what they're saying. Now, some of them are blocked and you can't see them,
right.
which is always interesting. But I want to know, and I'm not one of the people who say, we should ban all these people. I want to know what crazy people are saying. I want to expose them for how extreme they are, because I still do have some faith in the American people that we're going to look at some of this stuff and say, that's just crazy. A lot of this white supremacy stuff, a lot of people are turned away by. A lot of people find it appalling, and we should. The sexism, the homophobia, this stuff, we've got to fight this stuff out in public.
Agreed, 100%. I mean, I think that we just, the parties have polarized to the point that, like I hinted at before already in our conversation, there isn't much common ground anymore. And I feel like, as someone who for years and years was a political independent, that I haven't really moved all that much. It's just that, the Republicans have shifted so far to the right that I didn't have any other camp that I could, feel like I belonged in. And how do we pull some people back toward, and a lot of people say the center is just this blah and, lukewarm, and there aren't any great ideas there. But I think that, that's where we actually get some things done, is when you have, when you have some conservatives and you have some people who are moderate or liberal or centrist, who can get down into the mud pit and wrestle a little bit and find some common ground and figure out how to come up with some solutions.
I think that can only start. I think that can only happen when, and I hate to be the finger pointer in this, but I run into this all the time. My friends on the right, they believe wholeheartedly, without question, that they are patriots and that anyone who disagrees with them are tyrants. Mm-hmm. And when you have that binary choice where it's one or the other, and you put people into those polar opposite camps, nothing can happen. Because I argue I'm as much a patriot as anyone else in this country. I believe in my country. I will fight for my country. And the idea that someone would say that because I believe we should have national health care, because I believe workers should have rights, and you go down the list, that somehow I'm less than an American, less than a patriot. I don't know how you have a conversation with those folks. And again, those are the people I think you have to set aside and cut them completely out of the picture.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, I think that there are some space cadets that we are not going to recover, and that's that's one of the things that we've got to realize. I 100% agree.
I'm right there. Now, again, I just want to make it clear for everybody, because I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of hate stuff over my saying that I'm not going to. I don't see mass perp walks and mass convictions and a whole wing on San Quentin for the Trump administration.
Right.
I do want to see them investigated. I do want to see them held accountable. I do want to see them, if convicted, put in jail for their crimes. I just don't see it happening. It's not that I don't want to see it happening. I just don't see it happen.
Yeah, it's a realism thing, and that's understandable for me. And I didn't mean to, cause you any hate mail by throwing that.
Yeah, but that wasn't for you. That was for the people who are going to send me the hate mail. So last question I've got for you, because it comes back to the obviously getting the virus under control, because we're in a moment now. I'm sure you saw the Rose Garden press conference where Trump has basically said there'll be no shutdown under his administration. Nothing. They're hoping and praying on the vaccine, which they claim by the end of the month. I guess this month they're going to get out to frontline folks like you and nurses and folks who desperately need it. And then maybe by the end of April, it'll get out to the rest of we the people. So we've got some months to deal with as it's raging. And I say it's going to get a lot worse before it gets any better. How are you seeing things played out? And I guess the big question, do you take the vaccine?
I've debated this a bit already, because I got an email from my physician's office about enrolling me in a trial for it. And I said, I'm a 43-year-old guy. This vaccine's not proven. A 43-year-old guy tends to do pretty well with COVID. Should I jump on this or not? And I've kind of hesitated, and probably it's like now it's a paralysis by analysis. I probably won't get the vaccine. So I'm not there yet, and it's not that I'm not open to it, because I would love to not be able to worry so much about COVID like I do every day.
Right.
Our teams right now, I mean, the biggest crisis, I think, at this point in America, we look so much at what our bed situation is for ICU beds and hospital beds and things like that. And really what the biggest problem is healthcare worker staffing levels and burnout. And that's where, really struggling. Like we're in this constant wave. I think North Carolina doesn't feel it quite as much as some of the other states. I think that we've handled things very well, and we have not overburdened our hospitals yet, at least to a significant degree, where we feel like there are people who are dying who can't get into the hospital or can't get into the ICU that we've seen in some other states. But the burden right now on healthcare workers is immense, and that's not just hospital workers. That's outpatient workers who are seeing tremendous amounts of volume and tremendous amounts of demand and demanding people. We have to continue to respect them. I mean, I just think that there's, if there's a forgotten element in this pandemic, it's the healthcare workers themselves. And I think you and I have talked a little bit about how the fact that there's not really a lot of unionization among healthcare workers and how that would go, and strikes wouldn't be tolerated and things like that. And I think we've batted some things around back and forth, and there's not a lot of collectivization. I think maybe there used to be 20, 30 years ago. But irrespective of that, I think that we all just need to recognize the unbelievable amount of sacrifice that healthcare workers have made over the last 8 to 10 months in America. And it's just going to continue. And if I could drive any point home about that, it's that these people are literally every single day putting their lives on the line and their families' lives on the line to serve their communities. And that's it's an amazing display of stamina. It makes me very proud to be part of it, but it also makes me sad because I know that we're burning out a lot of people, based on our strategy or lack thereof.
Yeah. Again, that was always the concern, wasn't it? That we would overtax our healthcare system, and the chaos that would cause, along with the people that we would lose along the way. So we got a rough couple of months. But Keith, I appreciate the time. Really great talking with you.
Thanks, Rick. I appreciate you having me on.
Anytime. Our good friend, Dr. Keith Pochek. Let's take a quick break. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
One of the many merits of the excellent conversation I had yesterday with President-elect Joe Biden was that we were strongly agreed on the need to work together in the fight against climate change.
President-elect Joe Biden begins rebuilding U.S. climate policy at home and abroad. Federal Reserve warns climate change threatens to destabilize the financial system. Renewable energy industry defies COVID, gets set for record growth. Plus, Trump White House racing the red light to roll back environmental standards and wreck federal science on the way out the door.
That assumes they're going out the door. All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
For all those of you who voted for President Trump, I understand the disappointment tonight. I've lost a couple times myself.
Wait a second. Why isn't he talking about shower pressure and how windmills give you cancer? That's so unpresidential.
Yes, this is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, did we ever figure out how many letters into the Greek alphabet we are now with hurricane or tropical storm or whatever called ETA?
Yes, that is 7th in the Greek alphabet.
So if it hits Florida twice, does that also make it the 8th letter at the same time?
No, it does not. But Tropical Storm Eta is hitting Florida a second time, even as the state is still struggling with heavy flooding from its first round of torrential rains just a few days ago. The National Hurricane Center says a record 30th named storm is likely to form in coming days. And yes, climate scientists warn that man-made global warming is changing hurricanes, with very warm ocean temperatures contributing to this year's record high hyperactive hurricane season.
So Eta is the 7th letter. Theta, is that still out and about, that storm?
Yes.
And then there's a 9th one brewing as well?
Yes.
Oh, boy.
That would be Iota, pronounced Yoda.
Well, you don't have to show off.
In other news, the Trump administration is racing the red light, accelerating efforts to deregulate in its waning days with a flood of last-minute energy rollbacks, permitting decisions, and new rules to allow more toxic water pollution from power plants, weaken appliance energy efficiency standards, and scale back mine safety oversight.
Of course they are.
The Trump White House also fired the agency head that oversees regulation of electricity and natural gas, and removed the scientist in charge of the National Climate Assessment, the authoritative government-wide report on climate change, and they're going to install a climate science denier in his place.
How much damage can he do in about 70 days?
A lot if they can't get rid of him.
Why couldn't they get rid of him?
Because Trump has moved to change civil service rules so that his moles will be harder to remove.
We'll see about that.
The Washington Post reports that the incoming Biden administration plans an all-of-government approach to incorporate climate action into domestic, economic, and foreign policy, using executive branch authority to restructure parts of the federal government to move faster on global warming in every federal agency and department, even ones not typically associated with the environment, like the Treasury Department through trade policy, and the Agriculture Department, paying farmers to store carbon in their soils. Structural changes that don't require congressional action.
That's very cool.
Biden also began rebuilding relationships with U.S. allies this week and talking climate in calls with foreign heads of state. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson sounded downright elated about renewed U.S. leadership on climate change in advance of next year's COP26 UN Climate Summit.
The incoming Biden-Harris administration is able to make common cause with us. In particular, it was extremely exciting to talk to President-elect Biden about what he wants to do with the COP26 summit next year, Mr. Speaker, in which, as you know, the UK is leading the world in driving down carbon emissions and tackling climate change.
That is great. And by the way, Boris Johnson also called Donald Trump the previous president in one of his remarks.
Even the U.S. Central Bank, the Federal Reserve, has finally formally acknowledged that failure to act swiftly on climate change threatens to destabilize the global financial system with abrupt changes in asset values. And while the oil industry is struggling because of the coronavirus pandemic crushing demand for oil, renewable energy is defying COVID. That's according to the notoriously cautious International Energy Agency in its annual report this week, announcing that renewable energy hit record growth in 2020, and the IEA projects that by 2025, renewables will become the largest source of electricity generation in the world, ending coal's 5 decades as the top power source. The IEA projects that by 2025, renewables will supply 1/3 of the world's electricity, a remarkably rapid shift that also will substantially reduce air pollution.
I told you months and months ago, maybe even years ago, sell your oil and coal stocks, buy renewable energy. Just saying. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it looks like Donald Trump wants New York to beg. Evidently, he had claimed today in the Rose Garden, and like I said earlier, not the Rose Garden Supply Company in New York, the actual Rose Garden in New York, or I mean in Washington, D.C., evidently wants the people of New York to beg for the vaccine. This is one of those ego things where I'm just going, put aside the ego for a bit. It is about everyone, not just you. But it's an interesting question. Do you take the vaccine? Do you trust corporate America? Do you trust Donald Trump? Going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day, our good friend, former Congressman and political analyst Bob Ney. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick.
So the vaccine comes out. Do you take it?
Well, on the Well, I'll answer that in a second.
I think you already did.
My old political hat went on. I didn't talk as a journalist. But I was looking at the Cuomo thing, and about a month ago he had said Americans should be skeptical. So now, I think legitimately Trump could say, look, you said about skepticism. This is how he should have said it. You said about skepticism. Now, do you want it or don't you? Instead, he's making him personally beg for it. So I think the two of them have the war of words. Myself, I was asked this question today, and I said I'm going to wait a bit and then take it.
Yeah, I mean, you want to see how it works out on the guinea pigs who are our frontline folks.
Yes.
I mean, because evidently that's what we're saying.
I mean, look, it's here's a few thoughts on it, and I don't want to in any possible way, because I'm not a scientist or anything, but look, there's going to be, like, as I understand it, 4 or 5 different versions, number one. Well, 4 or 5 different entities with it, pharmaceuticals. Number 2, this is really important, and I read up on this. If you get, the vaccine from Pfizer, then you've got to make sure you note that down so when you go back to where you got it, because you have to get 2 of them,
right,
you must get the same one. You can't get another one. That's a big, big, big deal. The other thing that freaks me out in my mind a little bit, it's got to be kept at minus 91, right?
Right.
So I'm like, did anybody, turn the refrigeration truck off for, a day? I mean, this rollout, they've really, really got to do it, properly. And I think in general, you got to take the vaccine. Now, my daughter and I were talking about this. She's real, worried about it right now, skeptical, et cetera. She said she may not take it. Here's what I told her. Let's face what probably is going to happen here. You want a driver's license, you probably have to take it. You want to get on an airplane, you want your child in school. I mean, that may happen. Let's face it. That may happen. It will be a big argument, but it may happen.
Yeah, but here's the thing, Bob. I mean, you've got this Q-Kook woman down in Georgia, this Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's saying that, just putting a piece of cloth over your face is tyranny. It's oppression. What are they going to say about sticking you with a needle and injecting you with a vaccine?
Oh, there's going to be people that are simply going to say that they're not going to take it. But what I'm saying is eventually it may come down to where in order to do certain things, they're not going to break your door down and make you get it. But in order to do certain things, you may have to have a certificate that you took it.
So you're going to be carrying around papers then. Is that what you're saying?
To do certain positions, obviously, definitely.
Wow.
And, to go to school, go to college. I mean, there could be a lot of different variables here. I'm not sure who's going to do what, but that's very, very possible. I mean, in the end, am I going to take the vaccine? Yes. I'm not a frontline person. If I was and working in a hospital, I would either take the vaccine or I would quit, one of the two. So I would take it. And eventually I'll take it. I'm just not sure I would be, like, if they announce it's there tomorrow morning, I'm going to run to the place. I might wait a few weeks.
I'm of the mindset of I don't trust the Trump administration, but I got to think that the scientists who've developed this have done as much as they can in this hastily rushed process to get to this, have done some due diligence, and it's probably hopefully not going to kill us. And I also say that I'm relatively healthy enough that I want the more vulnerable folks to have it first.
Sure. Sure.
And
one of the problems I worry about just having heart condition stuff is just to make sure that, hopefully it's rolled out. It always kind of scares me a little bit, something done that fast, because normally it takes forever, to do things. But in the end of the day, I'm going to take it.
Right. So how does Biden roll this out? Trump said he was going to use the military. I don't know if we were dropping people in out of helicopters or what was going to be done. But he said he was going to use the military to do it. Did you see Biden following that route?
I think I'm going to guess that Biden will expand that. I think Biden will not just put one item on the table like the military. I think Biden will probably utilize, every aspect of what he can to roll it out. I would assume.
Yeah, because this is a huge thing. I mean, we haven't had this. We haven't had anything like this since the polio vaccine that I can think of.
Right.
I mean, and in this kind of speed, I don't know that I don't know as a country we're capable.
Well, here's my problem. Having served in the government and watched over the years the government trying to do certain things, and the people's mindset in a lot of cases is, wow, the government, it's so powerful. It's got all these dollars behind it and all these minds behind it. And then sometimes you see the government do things that you say, are you kidding me? So, I think overall this is probably going to work. The intentions are obviously good. We have to do something. But again, this is going to be one of those things. And again, that's why I would guess that Joe Biden is going to use every expansion he can to do this, because this is a huge effort. But I also imagine this is one of these things, if something starts to go wrong, they say, wait a minute, that's not going right. We are going to do B instead of A. So, it's not a time to try to, fudge this thing or smoke screen it or whatever. People would appreciate more honesty than they would trying to fluff it up.
Yeah, so this is one of those interesting moments because, the vaccine was obviously created while Trump is president. It's going to be rolled out while Biden is president.
Right.
Everyone's going to want to take credit for it if it works, and everyone's going to want to blame somebody if it doesn't. Are we a society that's capable of figuring that out?
Well, I would hope so. I mean, this is one of these things that we are all in this together, and people can have different opinions about, this or that store can be open and this one's closed. I mean, I heard that all day today. Why is Walmart going to be open, when everything else is closed? So we can have those arguments and differences of opinion, but we're all in this boat together on this one. So no matter who created it or who's rolling it out, I mean, I would just certainly hope that this is, quickly tested but good vaccine, and let's hope that it, that it rolls out. I don't think at this point in time it's going to matter, whose administration it was created under, or now it'll be rolled out under a different administration. I just hope it's done efficiently and they work together, and if they need more money to do it, I hope that at this point in time it won't hurt the Congress to cough up more. I mean, they've already coughed up a lot.
Do you see that happening under a McConnell leadership? Because my fear is
yes.
What is? Well, that was a quick answer. Didn't even get the question out yet.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Because I'll be honest with you, I don't have the faith that you were reactive. It was absolutely yes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have that faith in McConnell. I don't have that faith in the Republicans right now because I see austerity rearing its ugly head, and I hear we can't afford to do too much because the deficit and the debt. I fear that's coming back in spades. And, we'd like to have a stimulus bill, but we just can't afford it because we spent all the money the last 4 years.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you might hear that from some people or Rand Paul or something, but I think the budget has been blown into the next century. That's a whole massive another conversation for the Congress over a period of time. But I reacted quickly because I'm thinking of senators, Republican in this case, in states with people, wanting the vaccine. The majority of Americans will want the vaccine.
Of course.
And I'm thinking of people in the states and the pressure that's out there. And I think that the pressure coming to bear from individual members for the most part, with the exception of a couple of them, would be so tremendous on McConnell that he would have to yield to it. That's what I'm thinking. Not McConnell himself, but members.
Right, but let me ask you this then, because obviously McConnell will I assume is going to be the majority leader, unless the Democrats can figure out how to pull off a miracle and win both seats in Georgia. And I know they're going to try, but let's face it, it's going to be an uphill climb.
Right.
Let's say McConnell's the majority leader. How does a Republican from Pennsylvania, if Toomey decides to find a conscience, or any of the other states, move forward on something that McConnell's not going to allow it to come to the floor?
Well, again, I believe that they will pressure. I don't think McConnell will have a choice. This is going to be so emotional, so personal. I mean, if a senator would not support the money necessary to roll out this vaccine after all of the misery and suffering that's been going on just in this year and what would be going on next year, I just think the pressure would be so great on those members, they will they will defy McConnell.
No, see, now you made the caveat there that it's about the vaccine. I agree with you there. I will agree with the reflexive. Yes, absolutely. There's going to be money to roll out for the vaccine, but I'm talking about anything else. There's a need for another stimulus plan.
I'm sorry. I was off on it. I was vaccine focused. I'm sorry.
No, and that's why I wanted to clarify it.
Okay.
Because McConnell has said that they're not going to move on another stimulus plan. They're not going to do a lot of the things that need to get done. I'm with you. I assume. And I know what assume means, but I assume that money for the vaccine is going to most certainly be flowing easily and open to get as much as we can. And I'm sure the vaccine companies are going to be flush with cash; they'll be fat and happy. But maybe we get to the other side of this. The other part of me is what we need to rebuild after this. I see them going back to the austerity. That was my fault.
I agree 100% with you on that. I got so focused on the vaccine part of it when you were talking. No, the rest of it, it'll be pulling teeth to get McConnell to agree to some overall large stimulus plan.
Yeah, I mean
it would be tough.
Yeah, we're going to continue to hear the we're poor now. Weren't poor before when we gave massive tax breaks to corporations and the very wealthy.
Well, think of something too. He got through this election not doing a stimulus plan.
Yeah.
He didn't even react when the House did in May, and he could have actually more easily covered himself by passing a bill that they never actually went to a conference committee on. He didn't do that. He just outright defied it.
No.
So in his mind, he got through and still controls the Senate without a stimulus plan.
Yeah, there's a lot of blame going around. I think Trump's trying to blame a lot of people for him losing, and he did lose.
Sure.
I mean, it is what it is. How much do you think McConnell played in this? Because I got to tell you, the fact that they didn't get a stimulus plan out, that they didn't get money into people's pockets who were hurting, I think that had to cost Trump a bunch of votes. And if you're looking at these numbers, Georgia, really thin margin. Pennsylvania, without Joe Jorgensen, goes to Trump. I mean, these were such close elections that a stimulus thing I think would have put him over the top, and McConnell was the guy who held that up.
When you're looking at, you're right. When you're looking at 20,000 votes in one state, 16,700 in another, and you start to look at that beyond the Libertarian candidate, beyond that, you're right. I mean, a lot of people would have been a lot more happy if Trump would have been, remember, signing his names. He signed his names to the first checks that went out. A lot of people, and he would have capitalized on it. I think it hurt him because look what he did. After he took the stimulus bill off the table, within a day and a half, he turned around and said, well, wait a minute. And he was even offering Nancy Pelosi almost sort of a blank check to write in what she wanted to in the language part of the bill because he realized what a terrible problem it was. And then it didn't matter. McConnell actually rebuked him and said, stop this. We don't want a stimulus bill.
Yeah, because and we were talking about that throughout the election. That is going to hurt him, and I think without question, that single thing, outside of obviously his handling of the virus, that that has been divisive, but that single decision by McConnell, I think, was the stab in the back.
No question about it. It hurt him, and again, in races as tight as we saw, that could have absolutely made the difference for him.
Yeah. Now. We've seen evidently Senator Langford, Senator Toomey here in Pennsylvania, Romney, a couple other ones coming out and saying that the Trump administration hasn't given the Biden administration information that they need, the presidential daily briefings and all of the transfer of information. Have we seen any of that begin? Because Friday was the deadline. Have we seen anything that would indicate that Biden's getting what he should be getting?
Not yet. I mean, in fact, in today's news stories that went out, there were again quotes from a lot of prominent Republicans saying that, this has to change. And the State Department, as of at least yesterday that I saw, was not giving the phone calls to Biden from world leaders. Now, Biden's calling, or they're calling world leaders. The Pope's called him, Premier of China. But as of yesterday, the State Department was not officially passing any messages that it gets, which is the way the system works. They call state. And then the top senators, again, Grassley, Thune, You had Ron Johnson from Wisconsin. Even Lindsey Graham said, yeah, I think he should. Rob Portman of Ohio, John Cornyn of Texas, they've all come out. But from what I understand, and from Kelly, the former chief of staff of Trump's comments just today on CNN, from what I understand, people are saying you're not doing anything. You're putting the country into problems, national security issues. So I don't think much is moving, at least as of tonight.
No, and Andy Card yesterday saying that this is kind of the same thing that happened when Clinton was president and didn't give Bush. And now again, Card has a vested interest in trying to put 9/11 off on Clinton. But the argument is by not giving the people that stuff that they needed early on, the transition wasn't as smooth. Now look, had 9/11 happen in February, I'd be more apt to go, probably Clinton was involved. Right. Didn't happen for till much later.
Right.
But this is one of those moments where this chaos, not helpful, especially in the moment of a global pandemic.
Sometimes between administrations there are technical slowdowns.
That's a nice way of putting it.
Sometimes it happens.
That's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are. Sometimes, like with Obama coming in and Bush, they're cooperating, but there's problems and things don't work as smooth, Clinton to Bush or whatever. This isn't a slowdown. This is a wall. I mean, this is a stop.
Right.
This is nothing. This is not a slowdown. Nothing exists right now. I mean, this is the most stalled transition probably in decades.
Yeah, this isn't about cutting cords to computers, as some claims have been in the past,
right?
Or hiding the paper.
Notes,
this isn't this. This is a full stop. You get nothing.
Right. It hasn't even begun. I think it's got to break pretty soon because the pressure is going to be tremendous. The GSA is getting constant requests. I think Biden is probably going to go to court any day with the GSA to get the transition funds.
Yeah, but because this is the weird thing, because I always thought, once you became the nominee, that you got the information, the presidential daily briefing, so that you would have the same information. But I guess I was completely mistaken.
I mean, you can. I mean, they can. What the White House wants to do, it could do. Now, technically, December the 14th, unless Trump pulls off some Hail Mary court maneuver, December the 14th with the electors, that's it.
Yeah.
After December the 14th, that's it. It's official. It's done on the floor of the House.
Now, what happens if I've said Trump's not going to concede. I don't see him having the ability to go and give a concession speech. But what if he decides, you know what, I'm not leaving? The Secret Service have to drag him out?
Well, or military or somebody. But from what I hear from within friends that know friends in the White House, I guess that supposedly his daughter is pushing for him to stop and just
go golfing.
And see, yeah, the daughter, the sons, and Jared Kushner, her husband, are going the opposite direction. She's pushing for him to stop now. I say she probably wins over the other three.
Yeah, well, let's hope. Although, to be honest, she hasn't had that much influence over the last 4 years, but let's hope in this minute. Right. Anyway, as always, Bob, I appreciate the time and the insight. Good stuff.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, our good friend Bob Ney. Look, I hope she has some. I hope she has some sway. The matriarch of now the family name, I guess, doesn't want her children to be saddled with the grandfather's legacy of being literally drugged from the White House. But if you saw the Rose Garden event today, he looked really dejected. He looked like real reality was setting in. And to be honest, I shed no tear. Because maybe there's hope on the other side of this. And look, I'm hoping we can get past this divisiveness and we stop talking about who's in the White House and we stop dividing ourselves on this line. And that we go back to the idea, because I'll tell you, this is one of those moments where since the election, I've had to reevaluate what we've done with the program here and where we go into the future. And my goal in starting this was always about how do we make people's lives better? How do we do things that are gonna make opportunities for my kids better? How do we fight injustice? How do we open up opportunity? And for the last 4 years, it's been how do we stop really ugly, horrible, bad things from happening? So I'm looking forward to the new year I'm looking forward to the opportunity of getting back to my original view of what this program is about and what we should be doing. And I'm looking forward to, hey, how do we find common ground? And how do we make sure that there is a better tomorrow? Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com, that's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, Rick, at thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com.